So Andrew Tate's viral interview came out this week, and in it, he talks about Christianity and religion, which might be Tate's strongest criticism of Christianity so far. But I also have some thoughts. So let's go ahead and watch it together, and I'll give my thoughts along the way. All right? Let's go.
So then you extrapolate that out, and I was sitting and thinking, well, what's the primary function of a religion? And the primary function of a religion, I don't believe is the religion exists so I can live forever. I mean, that's a nice thought. But I think on a macro level, the primary objective of a religion is to restore and contain some degree of traditional value within the society.
All right, so this actually lays the foundation for Tate's entire argument for why he thinks Christianity is inferior to Islam. Tate believes that the primary function of religion is to restore traditional values in society and preserve morality. But that's not true of Christianity. In Christianity, the primary function is not about rule following or morality. Now that's a function, but it's not the primary function. It's not so much about changing society through enforced morality, nearly as much as it's about changing society through relationship and a change of heart, which we'll come back to here in a bit.
How do you judge the success of a religion? I don't think you can judge it by the number of people who join it, because there's lots of people who are Catholic who don't act Catholic. They don't act in any way particularly Christian. Anyone can say they're something. You can walk into a strip club and everyone says they're Christian. It doesn't mean anything, right? So how do you judge the success of a religion? Well, I like to think the best way to judge the success of a religion is how successful is it at fighting evil? How successful is it at preserving the morality of a population in X parameter, in X geographical area? So when you look at it from that way, you can't say that Islam isn't the most successful religion on earth. It's the most successful in regards to opposing evil. It's the most successful in regards to opposing its differing viewpoints. It's the most successful in regards to having people act within the limits and the confines of what it finds to be moral and good to God. It's the most adhered to. It's the most feared. It's the most respected in most forms.
So here he's saying that Islam is the most successful religion because it's the most feared and respected. Now, leaving out issues related to theocracy and things that I just don't agree with, his main point does make sense given what he thinks is the primary function of religion. But I don't think that that's a win, and we'll come back to why I say that here in a second.
And then also I'd like to think...
I would say it's the most feared.
Yeah, it's the most feared. But what is respect without fear? Do we respect men we don't fear? If there's a man who could do absolutely nothing to you on any level at all, you might be nice to him, sure, because we're not bad people. But would you really respect him? If you could take his chick in front of his face and set his car on fire, and he wouldn't do a thing, you wouldn't respect him. You might be nice to him because we're not bullies, but you wouldn't respect him. Respect and fear are linked. They're not always the same thing, and you can maybe have fear without respect, but it's very hard to have respect without fear.
All right, so now here we get to the crux of his argument, and I think that it has a number of issues. To start, when he talks about fear being tied to respect, the more that you think about it, the more you'll see that you absolutely can have respect without fear, and I think it's a lot more common than Andrew seems to imply. Tate himself says that he respects women, and given this, I'm sure that he would never say that he's afraid of women. I mean, we're talking about the top G here.
I'm top G.
Even Tate would say that he respects women even though he doesn't fear women. And this is where we actually get to the fundamental difference between Tate's view of religion and Christianity. In a healthy relationship, are you more motivated by fear or love? Think about it. On your wedding day, when you're the most secure in your relationship, do you think, okay, now that I'm married for life, I can't wait to break all of my vows, treat her like crap, and cheat on her? Now, maybe some guys might think that way, but I really doubt that most do. For me, I wanted to serve my wife far more than I did before getting married because she loved me enough to make a lifelong commitment to me. So in this way, I decided to follow the rules, not because I have to, but because I get to. In Christianity, the motivation is similar. Since it's more about a relationship than religion, once we know that we're saved by grace because Christ was willing to give his life and die for us, if we truly believe that, then it motivates us to want to serve him even more out of gratitude, not fear. We don't say, okay, now that I'm saved, now I can go live like Satan. Instead, we actually want to serve God and others now for the right reasons, not out of fear, which is, by the way, ultimately just selfishness. If fear is your primary motivation for behaving morally, then you're doing so as a way to protect your own butt, not because you actually want to serve God and others, or at least wanting to serve them more than you want to save yourself. But in Christianity, it's similar to serving and protecting your wife in marriage, not because you have to, but because you get to. Now, there's actually another really important point to make about this that we'll come back to, but we have to talk about what he says next.
And Andrew, speaking of fear, one could argue that Islam these days, certainly in the last 20 years with the war on terror, they've also been the most vilified.
Absolutely.
Right? So, everything that we've seen happen with extremism and everything that's going on all over the world, how are you grappling with that? You've been a Christian for years now, Islam, everything.
And you know what? That's such an interesting question, because when I was younger, especially when I was an atheist, I would sit and think, people are really doing terror attacks and doing all this crazy stuff because they're upset over a cartoon. That's so stupid. And nobody should kill anybody. Nobody should kill anybody.
Charlie Hebdo, everything.
Nobody should kill anybody. Nobody should kill anybody. I'll make that very clear. But also part of me is now saying, why would you want to insult the prophet for billions of people? Why would you want to do that? I don't even want to make the argument against free speech. I'm not even saying you couldn't be allowed to. This is a sensitive subject. I'm just saying, what kind of person wakes up and thinks, I want to do that? I don't know. I just don't think that's a healthy mindset. Like when I see these Satanists, and they're, especially in America, and they're doing, let's keep it on Christianity, these Satanists, and they're dressing up Jesus as gay and all this stuff, like, that's not done in any kind of good faith. There's no good reason to do that. That's done with genuinely malicious intention. And what kind of people want to do that?
All right, so here he's saying that he used to think that it was dumb for people to commit attacks on people simply for drawing pictures of Muhammad, but now he thinks that the type of person who would do such a thing is doing so only with malicious intent. Now, I can understand how it would look that way from the outside, but really, they're doing it for reasons that I think that Tate would actually respect. One thing that Tate consistently talks about is how he believes in standing up against the people who he thinks are part of the matrix, the left, the woke mob, the bullies, and the tyrants. In almost every interview, he talks about how these people think that they can enforce rules on people unjustly, and he thinks that one of the most masculine things that you can do is to stand up and say, no, we won't stand for this. What Tate doesn't seem to realize is that this is actually the same mindset of the people who draw the cartoons of Muhammad. And I'm not saying you have to agree with them here, I'm just explaining their mindset. Those are usually the people that say, no, we've had enough. You won't bully us into not being able to disrespect you and your religion when you flat out disrespect us and our religions. You don't get special treatment because you think that you can use fear as a way to control what people do or say about your religion. So these people would see themselves as defending equality and free speech, which again, I think are things that Tate would agree are worth defending. So based off of all of the interviews that I've heard Tate talk on, I think that if he understood their perspective, then he would at least respect why they chose to draw these cartoons. All right, let's keep it moving.
And it's also kind of interesting because in Christian countries, there's more respect for Islam than there is for Christianity. In a Christian country, name one. They still don't do it with the Islamic Prophet.
Why do you think that is?
It's too much smoke. It's just not worth the heat.
All right, so here we get back to him reinforcing his main argument that the best way to motivate people to behave morally is by instilling fear in them to do so. But once again, this is where I think that Christianity seems to disagree with Tate's view of religion. Christianity points out that Tate's view of religion doesn't actually change the morality of people in society since it doesn't get to the heart of the issue. If history has told us anything, it's that there's something so deep and wicked about the human heart that it can take anything, any belief system, any moral landscape, and any good thing and use it as a tool for evil. This is one of the reasons why Jesus talked about cleaning the inside of the cup rather than the outside of the cup. You can have people conform their behavior out of fear, but that only lasts so long and people will eventually act out against it. We see this going on in Iran today and other Muslim countries. People who choose not to conform and to think for themselves, people like Tate, will stand up against what they consider to be oppression. And secondly, forcing people to behave morally, even if successful, only makes the evil come out in different ways. When people are given rules for taxes, they look for loopholes. And when those loopholes get closed, they look for other loopholes. If people want to cheat on their wives, then they're going to look for ways to do it where nobody will find out, or they'll turn to things like porn and other things. So in moralistic religion, even if you're just the enforcer of morality, you'll notice that humans will find a way to behave immoral in doing so. This is why we have corrupt politicians and corrupt people in the government and so on. But the more serious you are in motivating people through fear in society, the stricter that you have to be in enforcing the rules, which is why why we see things like acid being thrown in the faces of women in Muslim countries who don't wear their hijabs in public. Using fear doesn't make society more moral. At best, it only causes them to work harder to hide their immorality, and at worst, it violently oppresses people. In order for true change to occur in society, people have to experience a heart change that can only be done through radical grace and love. Again, this is why Jesus said to first clean the inside, and then the outside will also be clean. In Christianity, the greatest motivator for moral living comes not from fear, but from the gratitude of the immense love and grace that Christ showed us with his life unto death. Christianity isn't concerned with merely changing behavior, but with changing the hearts that lead to a change of behavior and therefore will have a lasting effect. And because having freedom allows for hearts to be changed rather than just behavior, you will see some people that behave immorally for whatever reason. This is a problem. I agree with Tate here, but his solution doesn't seem to be adequate at all, in my opinion. So Tate may be right that for a lot of people, the primary function of religion might be to motivate them to behave morally out of fear. But it seems to me that in this context, then Christianity would be far more like a relationship rather than a religion. And if you want to know what I believe is the most common thread that may Tate go from being an atheist to an Orthodox Christian and finally to being a Muslim, then go ahead and check out this video to see what I mean. But the next time that you hear someone saying,
respect and fear are linked.
what are you gonna say? What do you mean?